Okay, so I'm here in my room. I've got my computer on in front of me. I've got my microphone. I'm set up with my notepad open to the notes about my podcast. It's time to rewind. Looks like they're open to the 43rd scene of Memento that starts in color at 89 minutes and 59 seconds, with Leonard slamming on his brakes in front of a tattoo parlor, and ends at 93 minutes and 48 seconds, with Leonard being mistaken for Jimmy by Natalie in his car behind Ferdy's bar. There's also a Skype window open. Oh, hang on. Who is this?
Bubbawheat, it's me. It's Eric, your co-host. But why are you here? You've got to get out of town.
Oh, I think I must still have some unfinished business here. And who is this?
For the last time, it's me, Bubbawheat. It's Leandra from Rocky Horror Minute.
Oh, of course. So, welcome back, and for joining us the last color scene, and this is our last episode with a guest. So, thank you for being our last guest here this season.
I'm glad to be here. Let's finish it out strong.
Yeah, and this scene is coming right after this, this tragic, heartfelt story about Sammy and his wife. And then we open to this screeching halt into the next color scene, literally, with the Jaguar slamming on the brakes in front of this tattoo parlor. And again, we see Leonard kind of having this visual reminder with this note with the, his next tattoo kind of right there in front of him. So that way he knows how to stay focused while driving. So that way he doesn't, just wander off in his car and go to, end up in Texas. And, he goes in and gets this, starts getting this tattoo. And, there are so very few other actors in this, this is another actor that we get. And, her name is Marianne Mueller-Lely.
I'm glad you tried it, because I wasn't going to try to pronounce it.
I mean, I didn't look up any sort of interviews to find out for sure. I'm just going by how Google Translate pronounced it. So yeah, she's basically kind of a character actor. She plays this type of character, like a waitress or nurse, or a small character in tons of TV shows and movies out there.
Well, let's call out the most important one, though. She's Sarah Connor in The Terminator, the first Sarah Connor that Arnold Schwarzenegger kills when he breaks into her room and kills the wrong Sarah Connor.
What?
Yeah, that's her.
That's amazing.
Yep.
I didn't scroll that far down.
I want to call out one other role of hers, too, that us 80s kids will be very well acquainted with the movie Revenge of the Nerds.
Huh.
And there is a scene where all the nerds are going to different houses looking for places to live. And the younger kid nerd, Wormser, goes to a house where there's a much older woman who very inappropriately flirts with him. And this is also this actress.
Oh, nice. Of course, Revenge of the Nerds, I haven't seen it in ages, but I am certain that is a movie that does not hold up.
Oh, it hasn't aged well at all.
Aged like milk.
Yes.
But yeah, this is him getting another tattoo, and this is the second time, I believe, that we see him getting a tattoo. The first time we see him giving himself a tattoo, and then now we're seeing him get a professional tattoo with this car license number. And if we get Teddy coming in, saying that they know each other. And again, I kind of like this kind of blank slate Leonard. He feels very different than he does through a lot of the rest of the movie. And he does feel the same as he does with Natalie, where, he feels very fresh compared to a lot of the previous scenes where I feel like he's more focused, and he does kind of go along with it. It's like he doesn't question Teddy or pull out his Polaroids. He just, it's not until he is in the other room by himself that he double checks his Polaroids and reads the back where he finds out that he can't trust Teddy.
Yeah, but he also, I mean, there's kind of a snottiness to him in the way he's talking to Teddy, though, too. That like Teddy he's on edge and he's nervous and he's like, you need to not be here. You really need to get out of this town, like now. And Leonard's got like this smirk smile almost as he's talking to him, like, why? You're full of shit. It just he's going along with him, but he's going along with him like he's almost taunting him.
Yeah, I could see that. He does seem a little off, and I do have in my notes that this is the most agitated that we ever see Teddy, because through the rest of the movie, even though it almost feels like he should be getting even more agitated, he's kind of fallen into, well, this is what we're doing now, and I just have to work on how to use this to my advantage. Where here, it's like they literally just came from a murder. And Teddy knows that they just came from a murder, but Leonard does not. And so Teddy is acting, very jumpy and on edge because of this. But Leonard is like the, cool as a cucumber.
Well, of course, he has no reason not to be.
Hmm.
I have a question about the tattoo placement for Fact 6. Am I remembering correctly that for this tattoo he needed to take off his pants because he decided to get it tattooed on his leg?
Yeah, it's on his left leg, right?
Yeah, it's right below his, it's right below Fact 5, which we saw him tattoo on his upper thigh.
My question is, do we think that is a great place to put specifically a license plate number?
Well, if he's not wearing shorts, then it's tough to see that if he's driving around town looking for it, that's for sure.
Yeah, I don't think that he wears jorts ever, so but maybe.
I mean, whenever he's in the hotel room, he's wearing flannels and boxers. Or flannel and boxers. But yeah, I think he's just basically out of room because the only other spot is the, spot on his chest that he's saving for the "We Got Him." He's just, this is the best place because he's running out of real estate. And, he already made the decision for Fact 5 on his upper thigh. And so it makes sense to do Fact 6 right below it.
I do love the thought of that. Like, he's not going to remember that he needs to drop trow in order to remember all of his facts. So these are kind of like things that I guess he's decided he doesn't need to know all the time.
Well, I almost feel like he should get additional tattoos. Like, Fact 1 starts on his forearm, and then like right at whenever he gets to, I think, Fact 3. Then it like switches to his other arm. At the bottom, it should have like an arrow that says like continued on other arm. And then
please see left leg.
Exactly. And so that way he's able to see where they all lead without having to search his entire body every time. It's like maybe the deleted scene is him like checking his back in the mirror. It's like, are there any back there? And then we get this conversation between him and Teddy where, especially on a rewatch, it feels a little weird because Teddy is basically talking about himself as if he was a different person.
Mm.
Unless you think that maybe there is some other cop that knows about Leonard's condition that doesn't make an appearance in this movie. Like maybe someone from back north who's kind of playing a long distance, like working with Teddy in some way.
I mean, I'm 99% sure this is Teddy talking about himself.
Classic Teddy.
yeah, I think kind of as a crooked cop that we see what Teddy ends up being. Even though it's like, what do you think about him describing himself as a snitch?
This seems kind of like when people are trying to sell a huge lie, they admit to a smaller lie. So he knows that he can't just go out and say, Leonard, this is how I actually know you. So he has to go with something that he considers to be like a quick reason for the way that he's acting, but not necessarily a truthful one, just a more convenient one.
Yeah. And one thing that I will kind of point out, because like as I'm kind of going through this scene, it does bother me a little bit as someone who has watched a lot of like reality tattoo shows like Ink Master and like Tattoo Redo and shows like that you can clearly tell that this is not that this is someone just moving a non-working tattoo needle up and down something that was probably put on with marker, because in a real tattoo you would get all this ink and sometimes like a little bit of blood as well, just kind of oozing out that constantly has to be wiped off, and yet this is all completely dry.
You know what? Guy Pearce should have gone full method and actually gotten tattooed for this role.
Of course. Yeah, at least one of them. If you had to choose one of his tattoos that Guy Pearce should have gotten for real, which one do you think it should have been?
I'd like how about the license plate one that we're doing in this minute? Just because out of context it's just so insane. It just would be so wacky.
Just fact 6.
Yeah,
license
fact 6,
plate
license
number.
plate number, and you're like, huh, okay.
SG17IU.
Yeah. People think it's some like strange code that means something to you personally, like, oh, Sarah Grossman, first person, and you can let people think whatever it means.
It reminds me of the old sort of joke of the first time you get a tattoo, you go, oh, it needs to be something that's super important to me and I'm very emotionally connected to what I'm putting on my body forever. And by the third one, you're like, I don't know, I like giraffes, so I got a giraffe. Like,
yeah, I'm not quite to that level yet. I'm still planning my fourth one, and my fourth one is the one I'm struggling the most with, because in theory it'll be the biggest one, and it's the one where it's like, I kind of have this plan, but it's a loose plan and I haven't really nailed it down exactly what it is yet. It's still kind of a vague, or a little bit more than a vague idea.
Would you ever consider getting something about your podcast tattooed on your body?
Not at this point. Like, because I was thinking about that, and because my first blog was Flights, Tights, and Movie Nights, where I've done written reviews of superhero movies and comic book movies, and I'm less active, but it still exists, and I'm still contributing to it, and I've had that for over 10 years. But I don't think that's a big enough part of my life to get like that logo tattooed on me. And so especially not this podcast that I've been working on for just a year and a half.
But how will you remember it?
At least it'll always be up there unless Spotify goes under or starts charging.
Oh, that's true.
Because I've also been cataloging the other Movies by Minutes podcasts on a wiki, which can be found at moviesbyminutes.fandom.com, and I have seen a few of them that are no longer available because they were on paid podcast sites and apparently stopped paying for them, and so they're no longer available.
Ooh, I wonder if that means that those are up for grabs again.
That I don't know. There was at least one of them, which I can't remember off the top of my head, which I was interested in listening to it, so I was disappointed that it was no longer around. But, getting back to the scene, we get more of this, and Teddy's really gives him this bag of clothes, which at first I thought that it would have been, like, Leonard's clothes. But, we don't see a good look at it, but all I can see is, like, white. Like, it just looks white and gray, which is definitely not the flannel shirt and blue jeans that he was wearing, and, like, the vest.
I think Teddy just went to Goodwill and was just like, we got to get new clothes. The last ones are no longer a reasonable choice.
Yeah, which I was a little surprised, because I thought that watching this kind of in order, having not rewatched the final scene beforehand, I was like, did he, like, shoot Jimmy and then there would be blood involved, and so he wouldn't want to have bloody clothes? But then I did kind of go back and double check that scene, and no, he strangles Jimmy, so there is, he does kind of bleed out from his ear, but there was not any noticeable blood on his clothes that he would have to not have in terms of, like, potential evidence, or just the fact that his clothes are bloody. So I'm not sure why he didn't just, like, bring him his old clothes.
The wrong answer, of course, is that he goes, I hate what he was wearing. I'm going to take this opportunity to give him a little bit of a boost.
So Teddy is actually the fashion police, is what you're saying.
Yes.
I could buy that if it was Natalie.
I definitely think that there's no chance that there was an aesthetic reason for this, but a girl can dream.
Yeah, and it is in this, like, nondescript blue plastic bag. But then, Leonard goes to the other room, I think, in Teddy's mind, to go change into these clothes. And he reaches into his pockets and he finds the Ferdy's bar coaster with the come by after Natalie. And then he digs again and he finds this mostly burned Polaroid of Jimmy, which at this point we don't know it's Jimmy, but we can just see an arm and, a little bit of a face. But I'm pretty sure that even from what little we can see, I think it's clear that that's a dead body. Like, do both of you agree with that?
I think so.
I actually watched the few seconds over and over again of him taking that photo out, and even knowing what happens in this movie, I actually had difficulty discerning what's in the picture. I said, it's probably an arm, but I actually had some difficulty figuring it out.
I mean, I can kind of see, maybe it is just the fact that I know what it is, but I can kind of, like, to me, I can clearly see an arm, and, like, just the way that it's positioned, like, it doesn't look like it's somebody sleeping. It definitely has, like, kind of this snuff film style air to it, to me. And then he sees, the don't believe his lies and decides to just escape out the window.
Yeah, well, writing don't believe his lies sure did work, because if he hadn't written that on there, he would have done exactly probably right now what Teddy told him to do, and none of the movie would have happened.
Yeah, exactly. And let me ask you, just, on a sillier note, because this, if we don't get a ton of humor in this scene, but do you think whenever he snuck out of the window, was that before or after he paid the tattoo artist?
Oh, I don't think he paid. I think that Teddy ended up having to pay for that one.
Don't they show Teddy giving her money earlier in the
maybe.
scene? I thought. Hold on. Keep talking. I'm gonna check this.
Oh, you want us to vamp for you?
I already see it. Yeah, and like a little after the 1 minute mark, it looks like Teddy gives her some cash.
Oh, okay. So I was right. That's really all we need to know about that.
Okay. Which I guess that makes sense because Leonard probably isn't carrying around a whole lot of cash because he hasn't been able to dip into the cash in the trunk of the Jaguar. And then, after he escapes, he goes to Ferdy's bar, and then we get this final/initial interaction with Natalie as she thinks that it's Jimmy, and understandably so because it's Jimmy's car and Jimmy's suit. That's the exact suit that he was wearing when she imagined she had last seen him in. And of course, once again, we have this very clean slate Leonard, this very like doe-eyed almost, where he's like, nope, you must have the wrong guy.
Yep, nothing suspicious about me, as far as I know.
And then it ends with her slamming the dumpster. And I did notice that, he is parked right by the dumpster. So I'm guessing that means that he parked in the back of Ferdy's bar. Do you think that he did that because of Teddy's earlier advice? Whatever he said, why did you park on the street? You should have parked in the back. And now he is parking in the back of Ferdy's bar.
I mean, would he remember that advice?
I feel like it's just a good best practice, but it is kind of left up to us, I guess, to determine if it's because he remembers from Teddy, but it has been a while, so.
Yeah, I would think that, maybe it's one of those things where he doesn't consciously remember it, but it's almost like the art of suggestion, that because Teddy said that, he's not consciously thinking about parking in the back, but that was why he ultimately ended up parking in the back, was because Teddy said something about it.
I can see that.
And then, that's it really wraps up this scene, and this is really the last color scene, and I mean the last scene in terms of this pattern, because after this we get the final two scenes that are basically tied together, and that's where this movie connects back in on itself. So is there anything else that either of you have to say about this scene, or Leandra, if you want to take this opportunity, if there's anything else that you want to say about Memento as a whole before we
I wanted to get in one thing before Leandra closes out her guest stint. The way that Natalie reacts when she realizes it's not Jimmy. She has been expecting this day to come, I think. Not that someone would show up in his car in his clothes, but she's been expecting the day that something will happen to Jimmy, I think. And she's ready with the lie when she sees it's not him. She immediately has almost a rehearsed reaction to someone that she thought was Jimmy and isn't, because of what Jimmy is involved in and what she's involved in. She knew that this is something that could happen someday.
Yeah, it's an occupational hazard.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, whenever you're married to someone in someone in the police force, or like in the active military duty, you kind of always have that in the back of your mind, and I'm sure there's some people that do kind of plan for the worst whenever that might happen, and Natalie is definitely a survivor, and so she is absolutely someone who would have this kind of plan in place in her mind of what she would do if something happened to Jimmy, or even like on the other end, if he ended up getting caught, she probably had in mind how she would probably I get the feeling that she would immediately separate herself from Jimmy in order to save herself.
Yeah, I don't think that loyalty is one of the things that Natalie cares most about.
Yeah, even though I do think that we're kind of given the impression that she does genuinely care for Jimmy.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, that wraps up this scene. And then, like I mentioned earlier, Leandra, if there's anything else that you want to talk about this movie as a whole or any other scene.
I just in general think that this is a very strong movie. I think that Christopher Nolan is perhaps a polarizing director. And I would say that this is one of his movies that I enjoy more than maybe some of his other more action-packed ones.
Yeah, this has been and continues to be, one of my all-time favorite movies, and I unfortunately haven't made time to continue a lot of Christopher Nolan's more recent career, but I do still hold this movie in high regards, and there's a reason why I picked this movie to do a 45 episode podcast series on.
Yeah, if you truly disliked it, I feel like that would be a strange choice.
Yeah, I'm not Robert Black doing his Mandy Sucks minute. But I believe those are all, extremely short episodes. This is, the wrapping up pretty soon on Memento. We just have 2 more episodes, and they will be guestless. They will just be, me, Eric, and Lisa wrapping up the final 2 scenes. So thank you again, Leandra, for joining us for these past 4 weeks and being our final guest this season. And why don't you, for the last time, go ahead and let everybody else know where they can find you online.
Fantastic. I've had a wonderful time, and you can find me any place you find your podcast if you search for Rocky Horror Minute, or you can just go straight on to rockyhorrorminute.com.
And as always, thank you, Eric, for joining me this entire season as my co-host for these color scenes.
Certainly, I'm sad to see we're reaching the end/beginning.
And as always, I'm Bubbawheat, and you can find me on Twitter, where I'm at Bubbawheat. You can find this show, It's Time to Rewind, on all the available podcatchers out there. We also have a Facebook group, It's Time to Rewind, a time loop group, and you can join that to discuss episodes as they come out. You can also be informed about what time loop movies and TV episodes we'll be covering on future seasons. And if you are listening on iTunes or Spotify or any other podcatcher that allows ratings and reviews, we would really appreciate it if you give us the highest rating available, whether that's 5 stars or whatever any other podcatchers use for their rating system. We would really appreciate that. And until next time, I assume I've already told you about Memento?
Only every time I see you.
I'm sorry, I thought you were somebody else. Sorry.
That's okay.